welcome to another episode of the Billy Ho Show. Just to begin, back in the late 50s and early 60s, when I went to college, I was introduced to the New Zealand Cadet Corps. And on Tuesday afternoon, we all had to get dressed up in the itchy khaki. And then we marched around all afternoon, and that was that, and we went home. It was a scheme where if we have another war, well, we've all got a rough idea what's going to happen. But anyway, a man called Grant Hodder, he was a little guy, he was in the sixth form, I think he was, but what he did, he was a regimental sergeant major, and he would march out, scream his high-pitched voice at everybody, and once he'd done that, then he'd get on his bike and go home. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good job. I think I might work my way up to that. So, so I did. I said, how do I get to be a sergeant major? And the captain, one of the school teachers, said, well, you need to sort of work your way up. So first of all, you have to be a corporal, and then a sergeant, and then so on and so on. So I got up to be a sergeant. Not quite there, but at the end of the fourth form, the teacher said, yep, you're confirmed a sergeant, you'll be a sergeant next year. So I was looking forward to that, but Mum said, no, I can't afford to keep you at school anymore. I've got you a job, you start on Monday, truck will be here tomorrow, and that was all that, gone, along with my idea of being a filmmaker, gone. But it was just interesting, the whole school got dressed up in khaki uniforms, just the boys. Not quite sure what the girls did. But anyway, it was fun, and I just thought a lot of you guys would have done that as well. So just a little bit of history. So what's coming up is, first of all, we're going to have a look at the mechanical shovel that were around everywhere back in the day. A big scooping, loading stuff and shifting dirt. And there's a whole range of that. So we start at Mangataperi, and then we go to Dunedin, and then we go to Stockton, and then we have a look at some of the modern day shovels they have on mines, not in New Zealand, but in other places around the world. After that, I'm interviewing an old guy called Dick Cumming, and Dick just turned 90, so we're going to talk to him about the old days. And as far as I'm concerned, talking to guys like Dick is our only way back to look at history from people's point of view. Otherwise, you're just looking at books and reading stuff. But to hear it being described is just wonderful. So let's get on with the show. And yeah, first up, the shovels. Behind me is what they call a shovel. And we're at the Mangataperi Museum, where they have Packard cars and a whole bunch of other cars and memorabilia going all the way back to God knows when. But anyway, if you're up this way, Mangataperi Museum is a great place to visit. So what behind me here is what they call a shovel, and we're going to do a little exercise in shovels in New Zealand. So there was a man called Sid Hogg who we spoke to a couple of years ago, and he was a dragline operator. And the way he controlled all those wires to chuck the dragline bucket out, drop it in the water, and then drag it back. But it was all by those controls up in the cabin there. But just looking at what's in here, there's an enormous chain in there, and that might be sort of so you can move the machine along. And then there's sprockets and gears and all sorts of other things that control this thing, and it controls the dipper arm. But it's all cables, as you can see. And it says up there that this is a Ruston Bucyrus, or rusting beside us, as they are commonly known as. But Ruston Bucyrus were built in England and, of course, in America. I'm not sure what version this is. But they had the tracks move themselves around, that sort of spun around. So there's some thought gone into building these shovels. And so what we're going to do now is we'll pop down to Dunedin, where there was a steam shovel. So they had two men on the job, one doing the bucketing, the shoveling, and the other bloke down on shoveling the coal into the machine. So let's go down to Dunedin.
1923.
1923, came from England. It's a big thing.
And when you think of it now, you get a wee thing that fits on the back of a small truck, can do just the same work.
Which is a massive thing. And it's got the boiler would be the same as a locomotive, except it's being
Standing
that
up,
way.
yeah,
It's standing up. Yeah. Just one wire rope, just one wire.
One wire rope. Because it had another rope that went up there to pull the release. That had a rope on it. And what it did, when the rope was pulled, it pulled the trigger down the bottom there. It opened it up so it would drop all the earth out. Or rock, whatever it was digging.
Yeah, wow. And so what moved the boom backwards and forwards? Or the boom just stayed where it was?
No, the boom was on a rack and pinion.
Oh, okay.
Other than the main boom was by itself.
Yep.
But this one here was on what they call a rack and pinion.
Yeah, I see it there, yeah.
They could push it into the bank or pull it out.
So how did you get in it to operate it?
Climbed up there.
Well, that's a long way. It's a big step from there to there to there.
It is. You wouldn't need too many whiskies, would you?
No. And then it's got just a little tractor seat to drive the thing. It's got
Yeah, that's where you sat and drove it from.
it's got pedals, just like like one pedal on the right hand
Yeah,
side.
well, that pedal worked the winch.
Oh, okay, yep. And the two levers?
One was for driving the tracks, and the other one was for driving the pinion up there.
Yep. So which one actually sort of made the shovel sort of do the shovel and lift up?
The one over the left hand side.
Oh, okay, one right against the wall
Yeah.
then. Right. Yeah, it must have been hot in there, I suppose. And how's the boiler being run? Is it a...
Well, it was a two-man operation.
Oh, okay.
There was one driving it and one was doing the
Boiler.
Of course, the tracks on this, you had to get out and pull the dogs out because they're dog driven.
Yep.
You had to pull the dogs out so it would freewheel.
Off you go. That's a decent chain in the middle there.
Oh yes. They made things to last.
Certainly did. A little rounded corrugated iron roof.
Oh yes, we had to renew all of that.
Yeah, wow. Ruston and Hornsby Limited, Lincoln in England. And nothing was welded. It was all cast and bolted together,
Yes.
or riveted together.
And on the rear of it, see it come from Lincoln, this here.
Yep.
There's a story behind that. And there was a poem that came out here that was telling me about it, and it came from Lincoln. And that was their figurehead for the city.
Oh, okay.
And what happened was, they built this church, and all around the walls in the church has got figures of angels and, you know, everything like that they have. And this joker was dissatisfied with it all, and he got the sack. So before they sacked him,
Put the nymph in there.
he put an imp on the wall. Whether it's true or false, I don't know, but that's what he told me that's where it come from.
Oh,
So
Ruston.
they decided that would become their motto.
Yeah,
So it sounds true to me.
yeah. Never let the truth interfere with a good story.
Oh,
I
yes.
always say no. Well, Bob, how many yards is fit into that bucket?
One.
1 yard? Really?
That's all.
So you got well, most trucks only had 3 or 4 yards at the
Yeah,
time,
they
didn't they? Yeah. So 4 lifts of this, and she's full. And spare parts? Would it have spare parts?
No, not now.
No, but back in its time they would.
Oh, in the time, yeah.
Yeah, it would have come with a few bits and bobs.
Yeah, there was a lot of them about at one time.
So 1923.
23.
This would have just come on a ship.
So,
Long way to come. Bob, my congratulations. Saving this is quite something from scrap.
yes.
That gasworks. I had no idea had all these engines to push gas out to the households and do what that does. All I remember is that great big round colossus there with a big tank inside
in
it. Yeah. So you brought things to light that I didn't know before. I'm sure our viewers will be very interested on how all this works. But this shovel is just colossal. But as I say, back in 1923, that's all there was.
Yeah, they were everywhere then.
Yeah, big and small. This is one of the bigger ones, I would have thought. Yeah.
It's just
Good on you, mate. Thank you
very
very,
good.
very much.
Nice to meet you.
There you go, Bob. There were mechanical shovels all over New Zealand, including up at the Stockton coal mine. This footage was shot in 1948, showing the big shovel moving coal around and loading GMC 6x6 trucks. The GMCs took the coal and loaded it into 1-ton railway wagons. Those wagons went along and loaded the coal into bigger railway wagons that were taken to the port for export. These big mechanical shovels are still used in mining today, albeit much bigger, with a shovel that can hold up to 80 tons. So there you go, the old mechanical shovel. Awesome. My 2021 truck calendar is now available, and here it is. It's a picture on the back of all the trucks that are on for each month, and the one on the front is a Lodestar Austin, I think 1950 or 1951. But these are available at Wickells, Paper Plus, and a variety of independent print stores or bookstores. So that's that one. And my wife Linda, she also does a calendar, so if you're into gardening or your wife's into gardening or you know somebody into gardening, this is a great calendar for that. And if you look at one of the pages here, I'll just show you. She's also got a colour-coded area which tells you what the best time is to plant. A bit like my Maori fishing do, good, bad fishing. This is the same, good, bad planting, so it's all there. And this is also available at Wickells, Paper Plus, and a variety of independent bookstores. If you can't find one, we do have 1 or 2 copies here, so you can just email me, billhoheper@extra.co.nz, and we'll organise to get you one if they've run out. So anyway, Wickells, Paper Plus, or a variety of bookstores around the country, so there you go. What I've got here is a copy of Talking Trucks. This is a book I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's the history of New Zealand trucking. And it's all from the programs that I did between 2013 and 2016. I'm going to let this go for $25. So it's a special. Christmas is coming up. So if you'd like your copy, there's my phone number, 027 277 0717. Just send me a text. Or email me, billhoheper@extra.co.nz to get your copy. $25 and the history of New Zealand trucks. Well, there's the shovels, those new ones, 80 tonne in a bucket, that's pretty good. Next up, we're going to talk to Dick Cumming. Well, with me is Dick Cumming, and welcome to our little show, Dick.
Hi.
And I understand you're sort of getting up there a wee bit. Gabbard Abbott and a few others around about your age.
Yes, they are. Yes, well, 90 plus.
90 plus, wow. When were you born?
In Te Araha.
In the year 1930 something?
1930, yep.
Wow, that's getting back there, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes.
And all the roads back in those days were all being dust and gravel?
Yes.
Yeah. And did Te Araha have a dairy factory?
Yes, they had a dairy factory.
Mind you, they were scattered all over the place, weren't they?
They were.
Yeah.
In Te Araha, Waitoa.
We were talking to a man called Malcolm Gordon who had a photograph of the Waitoa dairy factory, probably around about 1920.
Yes.
And they had about a dozen or so electric trucks
Yes. They were.
lined up. And you know, people you talk about this to people these days and they go, what? We thought electric was just a new thing. But no, back in those days they had electric trucks. They went about 60 miles, I think.
Yes.
And each one was allocated this little run to go and get the milk cans, and back to Waitoa factory they came,
Yep.
and then they stuck them back on chargers.
Yep. Back on charger overnight, and next morning they are.
Off they go again. And they were common all over the country apparently. But there's only one left. It's in Christchurch, and we had a look at it the other day. It's a Walker electric truck.
Yes.
And it's just had a little lever that just went through the clicks, you know, and goes faster and faster and faster, and you pull it backwards, it goes slower and slower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever see an electric truck?
Only as a small boy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they were odd little things
Yes.
with a flat front on them. Yeah. And then coming forward into your time, I see you've got some photographs of a Thames trader. What did you think of the Thames Trader?
The Thames Trader was a good truck.
It's about a 58 or 57?
Yes, 57 I think.
Yeah, yeah. And we met a man called Jackie Mitchell who thought this type of Thames Trader was the perfect truck. What he did was cart coal up Garvey's, which is a coal mine at the top of the hill, and then he loaded it up and bring it down and dump it into railway wagons. But he just raved about how good that truck performed. And when he did an oil change, he poured all the oil into the cavity around the cabin, so that we saw his truck just the other day, and it's absolutely mint.
Yes,
No rust at all.
no rust whatsoever.
So tell me about your time with the Thames Traders.
Well, they were quite good days, of course. What I used to do was cart fertiliser around the country. I was lucky that I had a bit of a contract with the local fertiliser people in Wongeray at the time, before they had the big storage, to cart the fertiliser to the aircraft on the paddocks.
Oh, right. What year was this?
Only 54, 53.
So they had the aeroplanes
54.
going back then?
Yes, they used to turn out with a old aeroplane and a couple of Tiger Moths and originally, and they put fertiliser into those, and then they got into the bigger planes, bigger airstrips, better location. And then of course it became a problem for getting fertiliser, because the fertiliser companies of course were in Auckland and everything had to be railed. So when the Land Surveys decided that they were going to get into these farming units, they bought these various farms in outlandish sort of positions, and then wherever possible they had to rail the fertiliser, because you weren't allowed to cart more than 30 miles parallel with the rail. And quite often they were dumped out in a little country area, which meant that you took a truck and trailers and a front-end loader. Originally there were various devices to get the fertiliser out of the trucks, like endless belts type things, and I had a couple of those, but they were great in their day, but too cumbersome and took too long. So we ended up by eventually getting a clamshell mounted unit.
Clamshell?
Yep. Where you could actually run in, offload the trucks and keep production going.
This is the next trader after the 57, then became
Yes.
the one that these were popular with the Ministry of Works.
Yes. I had quite a lot of
That's not a Ministry of Works one, is it?
Yes.
It is?
It
Yeah,
is.
I thought it was orange and white.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely Ministry of Works on that one. And then they had a little local concrete company. It's Atlas Ready Goes in Auckland. And
They had quite big trucks, Atlas, back and coming forward. Tell me about this little single axle trailer.
that little single axle trailer was the first trailer into the northern area. And it was actually made by somebody down in Napier. And for various reasons he made it, didn't like the look of it, and offered it for sale at a very reasonable price. And I found it to be the most remarkable thing that I've ever bought. Didn't really matter. You could put 4 tons of fertiliser on the truck and 6 tons on the truck, which gave a 10-ton loading. And in those days the fertiliser was quite expensive, and most of the average farmers could only afford about 10 tonne.
Did the fertiliser come in bulk, or come in bags, or come in... How did it...
Well, originally fertiliser came in bags, and then of course when we got into bulk, it was even better again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I remember Bill Prescott had a twin axle single
Yes.
like that, and it sort of shuffled around, but it had a stock crate on it. Had they were just an amazing little.
Oh, absolutely.
trailer. In fact, you back them up like an Arctic. You didn't have to sort of screw around
Yes.
sort of with the steering on the front of the trailer. Yeah.
And articulators were very good in lots of occasions. But we found that when we were into the fertiliser works and into trying to tip the Arctics in country areas, because half the time at the start of the fertiliser business with the aircraft, it was usually a paddock with a bit of a slope on it, and usually not enough room up top to be able to manoeuvre things, and we used to have all sorts of problems with those. But as an economical unit,
Did the job.
in
And there's a four-wheel
four-wheel trailer there, yes.
How long after the single did you get that or not?
Not very long actually.
I think there's a Thames Trader 57, 58 with a...
A load of logs.
Is that a lacy axle or is it...
No, it's a tandem drive, a
tandem
GMC
drive?
tandem
Oh,
drive.
and then he's got a 3-axle trailer
Yep.
on behind there. This thing must have been sort of like what, half a knot going up a bloody hill with all that on.
Yes, well, with the tandem actually came out of a GMC truck.
Oh, so he's put that in.
Put the whole tandem in the back,
Yeah, wow.
and high and low ratio gears, and it actually handled it quite well.
Really?
Yeah.
I see GT Gillies. I thought that was the South Island company.
No, they started off in Auckland,
Oh,
and
GT Gillies did?
then they went to Wellington.
Oh, you see the bloke that bought all the GMCs?
Yes, he bought all the GMCs and the goodies, and to me, I feel that the Americans did a great service to both New Zealand and Australia when, after the war, they left all these trucks and four-wheel drive units in both countries. And at that stage of the piece in New Zealand, our roads they were roads. And we needed the roads and access into various areas. And the only way you could actually do it was with the old Army GMC, because they had a 6-wheel drive and a front wheel winch. So you could run out, and if you couldn't get up there under its own power, you run the winch rope out, and you, between the winch rope and the power, you managed to get up the hill and tip your load of fertiliser or whatever you had on the ground, and then of course you could come back down.
And you did a bit of this.
There, fertiliser spreading.
Is that Thames Trader a 4-wheel drive or just?
No, that's ordinary 2-wheel drive.
And you got around the paddocks okay?
Yes. The 2-wheel drive was, the wheelbase and gear was suitable for 2-wheel drive for fertiliser spreading.
And you had twin spinners on the back to shift it?
Yes, single twin spinners, blowers on the sides, so you could blow fertiliser, the length of the valley. So you could get up on top of a ridge and back down, run down one way, back out, turn around and come back down the other side. So you get both sides of the ridge.
We went with a modern day fertiliser truck, and he got this little thing, pushed a few buttons, and the GPS
Yes,
is telling him where he's been on the paddock and where he has to go, how much fertiliser
Yes.
is gone, and then when he's finished, all that information went to the farmer.
yes,
Not like this time, you just sort of hope for the best.
yes. Most times the farmer came with you.
Oh, okay.
Most times the farmer got out and walked.
Yeah, those were the days.
Yes.
well.
Thank goodness they're all gone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Good on you, Dick. Well,
Okay.
there you go, folks. Dick Cumming, a legend from the old days.
Yeah.
There's a truck club called the Northern Classic Commercials Truck Club. It's based in Palmerston North. A couple of years ago, John Paul, who's a man from Taramanui, he organised a book launch and they've had, I think this is their third book from the Taramanui district about the trucks that work there, and he launched that. But while he was doing that, the Northern Classic commercial trucks turned up and they had a parade up the main street. So let's take a look at that parade. The first truck along is John Paul's family truck, which is an old Chev and has been very well restored. Next up there's a couple of Chev Utes and a Ford in behind that, and then there's an old OLB Bedford, and it did very well in the truck that followed. Behind that is an old fire engine, and similar to the ones we've just seen down at Hokitika. And then we come to an old Forest Products orange R190. Next up is an R-Series Mack, followed by an old Volvo, FL10 it says there, and then the Scammell, the old Leyland, and behind that is a Mitsubishi, and even that's got up into the classic stage. An old Mercedes, and then the heavy duty Kenworth from Napier. Following that we've got the old English Dodge, looking very nice. Coming along behind that is another big Kenworth, and behind that is another R-Series Mack, and we see that one round on the truck runs quite a lot. And then the old Leyland Beaver, the old Homoloy Leyland Beaver. Then we come to a 2070 International, a lot of those still on the road. And then another great big Kenworth, and behind that is a New Zealand modified Mack, one of the few in the country. Then we have another big International, more modern version, followed by another great big Kenworth, and behind that is an old Comma. These are the Superboys Commas, and were popular in the 50s. Then we have a couple more R190s. This lovely green one belongs to Bob Ellis, and occasionally he still uses it for logs. Then we come to a couple of very high cab over Macks, and they are just enormous, followed by a more modern Kenworth, and behind that is what they call an SAR Kenworth, short Australian right-hand drive. Then we've got a modern truck and another high cab over Mack, followed by a host, Gillison's, who hosted the morning tea for all the truck drivers, and they're one of the sponsors for the book. After lunch, the Northern Classic Commercials Club went for a truck run, which took them up the Punga. The Punga is a hill that goes from Taramanui over the hill towards Turangi. And here's a fine example of what it might have been like in the old days, with the Bedford crawling its way up, and he's probably changing down a few times, and everybody who's passing him are probably changing up. We did a story on the Punga, where the trucks had tanks of water on the back, which dripped onto the brakes, which helped keep them cool as they went down. And about halfway down there's a bit of a siding where the trucks actually stopped and cooled down, and while they were doing that, of course, they were catching up with the gossip and everything else. The run took everybody through a farm, and Bob Ellis's old R190 looks right at home here in the dust. Back in their time, some of these trucks would have been on these roads every day, and to be back on them now, I'm sure the drivers are thinking, wow, yeah, this is taking me right back to the time when we were pulling logs out or pulling metal out or whatever they did with their trucks back in the time. And that old orange R190, that just looks like a clip out of yesteryear. And once every 2 years they have either a South Island or a North Island run, which takes over 10 days, and they're a lot of fun. From Low Gear to Overdrive Volume 3 is available from the Taramanui Historical Society's webpage at rollbacktheyears.co.nz. Well, I hope you enjoyed our show for this week, and we'll see you all again next week.